Hi again. Last time I talked to you about particularly about the literacy assessment. P1 literacy, we in our offer to the Scottish Government in our response to the invitation to tender, we suggested having not a separate reading and writing, two separate reading and writing assessments for P1 because of their age, because we wanted to minimise the load, and also because we argued that reading and writing are so closely associated in the early years that it was legitimate to have a single literacy assessment that would really give information about both those areas. And so that's what we did, that was accepted. Since then we've had some feedback from the teaching community through Scholar, through their training program, that writing is perhaps not being done justice to, that writing is not appearing in P1 at all, and that may have some unintended consequences. So what I'd like to talk to you about today is dealing with that potential difficulty and just really getting a feel from this forum about whether people agree with that proposition or whether the assessment as it is for P1 does sufficiently cover writing as well as reading. So this is quite a short presentation, I hope. If I can get it going, it'll be even better. Sue, help. How can I get it started? Thank you. So currently this is the construct for the reading assessment and the literacy assessment. So you can see that there's the organisers for P1 literacy are identical with those for P4, P7 and S3. Although it's called literacy at P1, it's called reading at P4, 7 and S3. But the weightings are different. So the target weighting for those different organisers varies considerably between P1 and the other year groups. So we've got about 30 to 40% as our target for tools for reading for P1, and then about 55 to 65% with the other two, which are kind of roughly about comprehension. And what we've actually attained in our assessments so far is still quite far off that ideal target weighting, which was agreed by Education Scotland and Scottish Government. So in the first year of the assessment, we only had about 40% of items in the comprehension area, 45%, and almost over 50% in tools for reading. And similar in the second year, the current year now, it's a little bit close to the targets, but still not really getting very close to those targets. And that's partly because of we started with a pool of items, questions from international similar surveys, and the weighting was a bit more in that direction of what we've achieved. And also because there's quite a lot of concern about the level of what we can expect of children in primary one in the way of comprehension. So we've got a mixture at the moment of reading comprehension, as in you have to decode to read the text, and listening comprehension, so it's supported with audio, although the words are there as well. So that's what the comprehension part is at the moment. But thinking about the tools for reading, which is the middle or part of the display here from the benchmark statements, got our magnified bit. This is the tools for reading description, and you'll see at the top the E&O. I explore sounds, letters and words, discovering how they work together, and I can use what I learn to help me as I read and write. And you'll see that you're probably absolutely familiar with this, more so than I am, but you'll see that the codes are both a reading and a writing code for that. So the 13A is the reading one and 21A is the writing one. And if you look at the writing part of the benchmarks, the exact same wording is there for the E&O for writing. So tools for reading and tools for writing are in fact identical in the E&O for the two parts of literacy. And I think that's that sort of verifies the approach we've taken of having a single assessment for literacy, but it still doesn't satisfy the possible desire to have writing a bit more explicitly focused on in the literacy assessment. So why would we want to add a writing organiser? Why might we want to do that? One reason is to make more explicit the interdependency of reading and writing in early literacy learning. Another is to ensure the SNSA places sufficient curricular emphasis on writing in the early years. So it's not to say just because it's not an SNSA doesn't mean it's not important, but people might get the impression that there's something missing in the SNSA for primary 1 literacy. And also just to give a bit more continuity between the primary 1 literacy assessment and the older years when they have a writing assessment as well. So it could serve all those purposes if we made writing a bit more explicit a part of primary 1 literacy. Well, how would we do that? What would it look like? These are some of the benchmark statements from the current version of the benchmark document for literacy. And you can see that there are sort of quite strong parallels in those first 2 sections between the reading and the writing benchmark. So the E and O is identical, but the way it's teased out in the benchmarks is slightly different. But there are lots of connections between them. In terms of items, what would questions look like in writing? Come on, keep going. Okay, so this is an item I actually showed you last time, one of the P1 literacy items, which is currently labelled as a tools for reading item. And you remember that that was the benchmark statement that we saw that it was aligned with, and that's the descriptor that appears on the report to say what's going on with that item. It could actually be a writing item either. It fits very well with the one of the writing benchmarks. So we could continue to use some of the same items, but relabel them so that it's clear that there's a writing connection in the assessment as well. Here's another item which is currently in the live assessment. It's a tools for reading item. The descriptor is identify the letter that changes the first sound in a word, B to F. And that's the reading benchmark statement that goes with it, which is not explicitly stated, but we make sure that everything we put into the assessment does have a connection with the benchmarks. Well, it could be a writing item either, where it's really seeing whether the child can spell a word at a very simple level. And again, here's a more difficult item, currently in the assessment as a tools for reading item, with a descriptor that says identify the first and last letters in a 3-letter phonemically regular word or a CVC word. That again could appear as a writing item. And there would be some items we could look at the writing tools for writing benchmarks more closely and develop some more items that aren't currently addressed, but that would fit into the formats that we have at the moment. So really that's all I want to say, except that we could rebalance the assessment somewhat like this, so that we had a weighting for tools for writing as well as for tools for reading. Or potentially another way of doing it would be just to have one organiser called tools for reading and writing. So really I'm very interested in hearing your views about whether that would be helpful and whether you think that would be a sensible move. So can I just say 3 things before take comments and questions? Okay. First of all, if I'm blushing, it's because I just noticed this. Mea culpa. I apologise.
It's all right, we'll correct it.
Okay. Okay. Second thing is, this is just an in principle an idea, and I should have said that we completely acknowledge, and everyone does, I'm sure, that we don't assess all parts of writing. We can't assess all parts of writing. We can't assess all parts of reading. All the engagement things, which are really important parts of both of those areas, are not assessed in SNSA. And there's a whole swag of things in writing that we are not able to assess using this format. But this would be just one way of putting a little bit of aspects of writing into SNSA. And the second thing that I should also make clear is that even if everybody thought this was a fabulous idea, let's do it straight away, it will actually take several years to get it included, because it's quite a slow process making sure that we write items that have to be reviewed by Education Scotland, then put into trial testing, and then reviewed again. And so it's going to be a while before it came through. But if we don't start, it won't happen at all. So this is really just floating an idea at the moment, and please take it in that spirit.
So, any comments? Yes.
My slight concern is that writing in parents' head is around picking up a pencil and writing, and I wonder how we make sure that we're clear. But I have children who could probably do that assessment in terms of it using the writing benchmarks, but they don't have the manipulation in their hands and they don't have the muscles yet to do that. So the parent would come in, if the parents were requesting information about the assessments, we would need to be very clear that writing is not just about picking up a pencil and being able to use that.
Sure. I look at absolutely true, and there are two, I think I might go back to the previous slide if I can manage it. No? Come on. This one, so this is the benchmark statements underneath the E&O, and this is what you're talking about, these first two benchmarks. Well, we can't assess them in an online assessment, obviously. Not, neither can we assess all the creative and constructed response parts of writing that are absolutely key to good writing, of course. So yes, it's quite a restricted range. So it's really these guys that we'd be trying to assess. And in the slide that I had up before, the benchmarks up here are ones that we think we could relabel as tools for reading and writing, or just tools for writing, if the direction went there. These ones, there aren't any questions in the assessments at the moment that address these areas, these benchmarks, but we could write items that would address them. So we'd be covering, like, I don't know, 6 out of the 8 benchmark statements in tools for writing if we got the go-ahead to go in that direction.
So really the question that you've got is, do you just relabel what you've got as literacy rather than, and sort of rethink it in people's minds, or do you add extra items in which may change the balance of the assessments?
I'm just thinking about the fact that it's all the technical aspect of writing, and you've highlighted that. So I think that would be something that we would really want to be highlighting. Also, that we're looking at the technical aspect, but it doesn't say anything about engagement. It doesn't say anything about purpose for writing, audience, and all of those things that we know really make a difference to attainment in the long run.
That's right. And I mean, similarly, the writing assessments for P4, P7 and S3 are very narrow in their focus. I mean, we acknowledge that. Yes, tools, yeah.
And you almost want some caveats around, some actual, red letter warning signs saying this doesn't tell you anything about this, and if you want to address issues, particularly for children from low literacy backgrounds, actually understanding the point of writing, that writing is there to communicate an idea and that it's there to make people think things or to remember things, and actually if you don't understand that point, then
you don't want teachers to
all
be
the technical knowledge in the world won't help.
You don't want teachers to be narrowly focused on the technical aspects. Not that they would be, but I do think we need signposting clearly that this is one tiny aspect.
Right.
I think, sorry, you've made a very, I'm just going to throw you into the hot seat that's here. You made a very good point.
So I actually made the mistake at the beginning of the conversation. I thought when you were going to introduce tools for writing, they would perhaps be physically writing, the word fall, changing it for ball, and then so that made me think, oh well, that would you have to have it one-to-one then with the children? Then realise you're actually just changing the label. However, I'm not sure how beneficial that would be at the end. A lot of the benchmarks are the physical element of picking up your pencil and doing the writing. I know that there's lots of children that could do the act of the way we maybe do it in the play-to-learn environment with the matching and dragging the letters down to make the word, but can they actually pick up the pencil in the end? I think just tools for writing might give you a false perception at the end of whether they are able to do that or not. I know loads of mine could match the word, but actually asking them to write fall, what does it look like again? They can recognise it, which they can do very quickly, but actually can remember the proper formation for it. And I think that's maybe something that could be considered about whether they actually can do the writing part. That's what most of the benchmarks do refer to.
Well, 2 of them do.
Yeah.
I wonder if this comes back to the point that Lindsay Patterson was making, that the debate round the table is, why are we using this, what's it for, and that teacher's professional judgment, which I think that's great to debate that, what the question looks like, because if you're a practitioner and seeing, right, they could do that, they've got that tool, but in triangulating it, what they're able to produce, that's not giving me the assessment information that shows that they're able to achieve this benchmark, as opposed to a collection of data around X% of children succeeding or not succeeding within tools for writing that might be collated at a school or national level to say, are we succeeding or not succeeding in writing? We're not going to get that data necessarily from this, because we don't have that ability to have the scripts of writing for children. So there's maybe just that, we were going back to say that, the red warning around, this data tells us what it tells us, but it maybe doesn't illustrate the full picture, as none of the SNSA can, because it's a snapshot in time. Children at that moment in time, that moment in their lives and in their school journey, that has to be used within the wider context to create the best judgment that the teacher can make, who knows them best.
Okay.
So, what's the consensus? What advice are you giving? Or Juliette's here because she wants to know what to do.
Well, I guess
What are the options? Give us the three options are.
Yeah. So leave things as they are. I mean, look, okay, let's assume that the P1 assessment is going to continue. It will live to fight another day. That's taken as a given, right? So we could leave it as it is. We've just got we call it literacy, but actually the organisers are all just reading organisers. We could introduce a new organiser called Tools for Writing, to sit alongside the 3 reading organisers with a reasonable weighting. Or we could combine Tools for Reading and Writing. We'll have a new label for that part of the assessment, Tools for Reading and Writing, and have items in there, some of which already exist there, and some of which we could create new, specifically writing-directed items that would be part of that organiser. So is that the 3 that you meant?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's caution over adding too much that extends the time a child has to sit and participate in the assessment.
It wouldn't extend the time. That's not what we're proposing.
To be really careful around that, because at the moment it's quite a long time for our wee ones. So if we were to extend or change it in any way, we need to make sure that if anything we're reducing that time.
Right. The average time for a child doing the P1 literacy assessment is 27 minutes.
But for a primary one and the play pedagogy, sitting at a computer for 27 minutes and then for numeracy is a lot.
That would need to be chunked. In the play to learn, they're used to sitting at the teaching table for like 12 minutes. I would even say is a long time. We do short snaps regularly throughout the day, so actually asking them to sit down for half an hour isn't what they're used to. They're sitting in the chair for half an hour. I think it's a long time.
I think some of them would kill to get half an hour on a computer because they spend about 6 hours all weekend,
We've been doing it with the
trying to get off
iPads,
the problem.
we've got the iPads for in class, because we started using them obviously in our school and they want some children will sit at
I agree with that, but in our situation we have desktops, which have, as you described, the 2 in the classroom that work, and the ICT suite, which we'll get rid of once the iPads arrive in April 2020, but again, that just shows the differences between the administration and the text.
I think what you showed about how the benchmarks and how some of them are a dual purpose, some of those questions are actually already there within the assessment, so you're not adding to it, you're just recategorising, which means that it's not necessarily adding anything more to it, it's just giving you more information when you come to that diagnostic.
Yeah, and I suppose, one of these thoughts is about just this this thing that's come from the profession about denigrating writing as part of literacy because it doesn't appear explicitly at all in SNSA. So that's a worry in some quarters. I think there's a meeting of HMIs that expressed the same point of view. So it's it's partly an actual change, but some of it's relabelling what's already there.
But some of the aspects of writing that you're including, aren't necessarily the aspects that will help children to become effective and engaged writers. And that's just because of the type of test.
Can I ask what HMI? Who said it?
I don't know, I wasn't at the meeting, but there was a meeting at HMI.
Oh, it wasn't said on Saturday. On Saturday.
No, it wasn't recently, it was last year.
You mentioned that, I think it was
October maybe?
no idea.
Okay.
Wasn't there, obviously.
Do you want a little while to just think about those three options?
So is number 2 leave it as it is and then link it
Number
to the,
one is leave it as it is.
but add tools for writing as new, right.
As a new organisation.
What you're saying is another section.
It will be, they're not sections, they're it would be within P1 literacy, there'd be 4 organisers instead of 3, and but it would be the same length of assessment, it would just be different weightings.
But it would change the percentage of the amount of the the assessment that is actually focused on the tools and diminish the amount that was focused on things like comprehension.
But it depends on your perspective. If you think back to the slides that Juliette showed at the beginning, the aims that we're trying to achieve, we've not quite got there yet. So the slide that Juliette put up with the proposal around how to structure into the 4 different groupings actually wouldn't drastically change the weightings from what we've actually got in the assessments at the moment. Because we've got a few more questions than we actually should in terms of the tools for writing, because we're still moving towards the ideal.
Tools for reading,
But, right, okay.
But it changed the targeting,
Right, okay.
Thank you. So we want to use it diagnostically, so staff need to be able to look at the organisers and know what it's assessing. Primary 1 practitioners know they're intrinsically linked. All you're really getting out of that is can they segment, which is one aspect of writing. So from that argument, I think you do a combination of 2 and 3, sorry, you rebadge them, but you want the emphasis to be clear. Is it a blending activity, is it segmenting? And staff are quite clear on when they're setting next steps. But I don't think they should add any more, and I don't think we should.
So you're really just going for clearer instructions and caveats about what this might mean.
Yeah.
Right, okay. So that's not the 4th option.
Okay, yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Right, we'll go along the front. You're on, kids. 1, 2, 3 or 4? Do you want to discuss it now that we've got 4 options? Has anyone got another option they want out there? Right, okay, good. Right.
I'd probably go for 4. I'd go for 4, yeah. I would just be worried that the kids that come out with really high results for tools for writing when you know they're not ready for writing. That's my only issue with it. I just, for thinking of the kids in my class, they're going to come out high tools for writing and they're not ready to pick up the pencil yet. So
okay. That's good, yeah. And you can pass on this if it's not an area that you've got a lot of expertise on. Feel free to just say, pass, I don't know enough about it. But that's good, right? So put 1 for more caveats you go, right?
I don't know much about it, but my kind of worry would be just separating out benchmarks, particularly a small number of benchmarks from the others. You know, and I don't know if that is that good practice to be sort of
We're not
assessing those 2 benchmarks there, for example, but not being able to assess the 3 at the bottom.
Well, what I'm saying is that currently we've got nothing. The classroom teachers don't see the benchmarks that they're aligned with, but we're thinking about, as test developers, we're trying to align the assessment with your curriculum documents, and our Bible is the benchmark. So there's nothing explicit about the relationship between items and benchmarks in the public domain, but we're thinking about how we can address as much of the benchmark document as we can, and if we were given the go-ahead to address tools for writing, these are some benchmarks that we think we would be able to address in our current formats.
And we start off with you. So that's it. Right.
That's really, thank you very much. I mean, and thanks very much for talking about improvement, continuous improvement. I mean, that's really, we're trying to think about how we can make this assessment the best it can possibly be, and we've got lots of ideas. Sharing them with you is a really important part of getting the right steer at a good moment. So thank you.